In 2016, we showed you Ukraine beyond the headlines, the way the cathedral never bothered to look. In 2017, we showed you 3 countries, 2 of which, Georgia and Armenia, being the living descendants of some of the oldest civilizations on Earth. In 2018, we will show you Jordan and Israel, if you will make that happen. So let me tell you why you should. Hello everyone and welcome to the video I don't like to make, but I must make. Alright, so as announced earlier this year, the fan-funded tour of this year will be in Jordan and Israel. And because I'm asking you all to fund some of it, I will have to be more open about the itinerary. So, here's the plan. To avoid as many border fees as possible, I will fly from here to Amman, Jordan, and spend at least 4 days in Israel's eastern neighbor. Now, Jordan imposes an extra tax on visitors who spend less than 2 nights in the country, and the tax is higher than the cost of spending 2 nights in Jordan. So there's that. Then there is the fact that Jordan's mightiest landmark, Petra, requires in and of itself at least 2 full days to properly explore, and by full days I mean arriving there at 6 a.m. and leaving at 8 p.m. Yeah, it's that big. Petra, or Rakmu, or Al-Batra, is a city established in the 4th century BC that used to be a very important trade center and one of the few structures in the area that predates Roman conquests and is still standing. In fact, the city continued to flourish under Roman rule as well and fell out after the end of the Roman rule, partly due to technology, in fact. Once sea trade routes became the main way through which global trade was made, Petra's position became less and less relevant until the city was abandoned. And abandoned it remained until the 19th century, when a Swiss discovered it and revived the interest for it. And what a treasure did they discover. And it continues to be discovered. The site has not yet been fully excavated, even though excavations began 90 years ago. I've looked to how other YouTubers treated the site, and all I can say is that I'm not impressed. Admittedly, the site comes with challenges. You need many batteries if you want to do a proper exploration and capture it on camera, which is exactly what I will do. Back in Amman, there are a few things to do, but the part that needs to be done is to take you all on a tour through the streets of Amman. Now, I have seen a few Middle Eastern towns, and I gotta tell you, Amman is in my personal top 3, precisely because it looks and feels the way you'd expect an Arab town to look like. Neither overtly expensive and inauthentic like Abu Dhabi, for instance, nor terribly poor, crowded, or violent like Cairo. Amman is one of those towns that indeed strikes a good balance, unless we're talking about the press, but more on that later. So, to carry on with the itinerary, after exhausting Amman and after I will have put my health to serious tests because of the desert climate, I will cross the border into Israel and stop by in Jerusalem. And here comes the complicated part. Jerusalem has more history in it than entire countries combined. Now that's a good thing. However, Jerusalem is also one of the most expensive cities in the world, and that's a bad thing. In fact, this will be the only tour this decade in which housing will cost more than the traveling itself. Very expensive indeed. To make things more complicated, videotaping comes with restrictions, especially in the so-called Palestinian sector, although my Israeli friends tell me things have gotten slightly better in this department in the last several years. Nevertheless, in addition to some of the rather known landmarks, I will want to take you to a tour through the Armenian Quarter, because it's one quarter of Jerusalem that is rarely, if ever, covered by the media. And that needs to be addressed because it's the oldest living diaspora community outside of Armenia that has been there since Armenia became a Christian state. That is to say, since the first country in the world became Christian. The stories from that place are just stunning. And then from Jerusalem, I'll get on the road again to Tel Aviv because that's where there are the cheapest flights from Israel to Romania, basically. But I will spend a few days too in Tel Aviv for sightseeing and hopefully for interviews. Now, about the interviews. Several of you asked me to arrange some interviews in the area, which is fine. You know what's not fine? To ask me to do interviews in the Hamas area. That's just not going to happen. Anyway, so to avoid the unpleasant experience that I had in Armenia, where even though I emailed for interviews 3 weeks before arriving in Yerevan and then called from Georgia to reconfirm and in the end to wind up being refused because I had not sought proper authorization in due time. Yes, really. Anyway, so to avoid this time I started earlier. And by earlier, I mean weeks before I even published this video. Ultimately, I cannot promise too much now because I only know how many days I will be in Jerusalem, but I still don't know how many days overall will I stay in Israel or Jordan. That is entirely dependent on how successful this fundraiser will be. What I can promise is that I will try to fulfill most of the requests already submitted. I did email 3 teachers, 2 politicians, 5 journalists and 3 students so far. We'll email a lot more in the coming weeks and months. Something's gotta come out from all of those contacts. Alright, so just like in the previous years, I will cover over 1/3 of the cost and require you to help with the 2/3 of it. The total cost in the most efficient way is about $3,700, though I do not expect to be as efficient as I was in Armenia and Georgia, where I exceeded the most efficient estimation by less than $50. This is the Middle East after all. And in the Middle East there are many things that are random or that can go wrong. But more important than that, there are many unforeseen expenses. And although I am an experienced traveler and have learned throughout the years to avoid such unforeseen situations, that still doesn't mean I can safely bet on them not happening. You will notice in the description where I provided additional details on how I want to spend the shekels that I divided the table into the portion covered by donations and the portion covered by myself. In the description I listed the absolute minimum or the cutoff point, which is the point that is absolutely necessary before even leaving this apartment basically, though I suspect in the end will fare much better than that. So the amount I am requiring from you over the next 7 months is $2,300 or a bit over 8,000 shekels. Now, considering this is the 3rd time I'm doing this and have always delivered so far, I will rely on the track record of trust built over time on this. This trip will occur in the 2nd half of September, at best stretching all the way till October the 1st or the 2nd, but more realistically till late September. I will provide periodic updates on to how the fundraiser is going if that will be necessary. For instance, last year the fundraiser went over the goal in 3 months and even over the stretch goal by the time the trip actually took place. So the goal here is $2,300. The stretch goal is of course $3,700, which is the complete cost. Just like last year, if any shekel comes in beyond that, it will go into the general fund of the channel for equipment. I will soon need a 4 terabyte hard drive, for instance. So it's not like there isn't a list of necessities for the general operations here. The minimum sustainability point is $1,500. When that point is reached, I will of course announce it, and only then you and I will know that the tour is absolutely happening. Just like I did last year. I will leave links in the low bar with past work for the newer subscribers so you can evaluate and judge for yourself my past track record with these things. I am quite optimistic about it, really. Partly because the destinations, while not as obscure as last year, are still intriguing enough to warrant the hassle. So with that, I hope I convinced you to please give a shekel for the noble cause of me showing you one of the gems of the Arab world. One of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, that will be Jerusalem, and of course the inside of one of the most passionate political disputes of the modern world. The longer I get to stay there, the better the videos will be, because if I'm in a hurry, the quality of the raw footage suffers terribly. So every shekel matters. Also, if none of the donation options down below are useful to you, do not hesitate to write me an email and I will happily provide you with further alternatives. And with all of that being said, thank you for watching. I hope you will consider a donation for this endeavor. Thank you all for your consistent and generous support, and I'll see you all soon on Freedom Alternative.